welcome to Kim from Managing Director Video for Cloudinary.
Thanks, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here today. Sounds like you guys have had a good day so far.
Yeah, it's been a good couple of days so far. So and looking forward to this chat and obviously the rest of the conference. So yeah, so we've actually got a lot of things to talk about here. So let's just jump right into it. So let's just get right into the questions here. So the first thing I think we should talk about is just kind of to look at some general things, like kind of give a sense of the landscape, current landscapes and trends. So Kim, what are the biggest trends that you're seeing in the video space right now, and how do they impact both business strategy and technical decision making?
Yeah, there's a few things. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that consumers are expecting a more engaging experience, or that you can get that more engaging experience with video. I think, though, some of the ways that they want the video to be now is a little bit different. So, for example, it used to be that people would watch or consume content and it would be 40, 60 seconds. Even 5, 10 years ago, that was a long time. And now actually most consumers are asking for shorts. This is largely driven by Generation Z, but other generations as well. So think short, sweet TikTok style. You might even think of this as like micro videos, but you're really thinking something 7, 10, 15 seconds at the most. And so what they're wanting is for you to capture their attention really quickly and hold it and get your message across in that short amount of time. So shorts are on the top of everybody's mind. At the same time, silent videos continue to gain momentum. If you remember why, these were originally videos that were auto-played without sound. And people actually like this. Sometimes you're in a public spot where you want to watch the video, but you can't turn the sound on. And so people continue to consume videos without sound. The thing that they're adding to it now is captions or subtitles so that you can still overlay a message. And consumers seem to be just fine with this. They think it adds to the experience and they're happy to get the extra content. Maybe one more little trend that's coming up that we see is the rise in user-generated content. And I know people have differing views about this, but actually we do see a lot of brands and consumers talking about user-generated content. For those younger generations, they actually think that an engaging video experience is more authentic if it's with consumers who themselves have used the product or service. So they don't only want that stacked, beautiful, picture-perfect video that you've got. What they want is to hear people talking about it, to be able to look and feel, to see if it would fit or work for them, and to hear actual commentary about, yeah, this part is really good. This I don't love, but I can live with it, right? That's actually what they're wanting. And so when you think about it, these users are actually checking reviews anyway before they're purchasing a product online, and they're almost always checking a user-generated video if they can see it as part of that vetting process. So if they're doing that already, something to consider is how to tie user-generated content back to your site or your app where you're actually trying to get conversions pushed through. And so what this means then in terms of business and technical decision makers is definitely a lot more thought about what type of video to be using. So instead of just saying, yes, we have video, it's, hey, how long or short does it need to be? And how do we need to hit those points as fast as possible? We see a lot more people really thinking about user-generated content, but having some concerns around how to make sure that brand safety is there, that there's control and moderation and approval processes in place, and thinking how to do that. But then for sure around like post-production workflows, because being able to look at some of these elements and to cut videos into much shorter segments does take time and effort. And so they're looking for tools and automation processes to streamline that. And I would say the last thing, especially when you're thinking about captioning, is there's the EU Accessibility Act, which is coming into play next year. It's a big deal for anybody who wants to sell goods or services in the EU, and this is top of mind for everyone. You have to have this in place by June next year, so it's something that almost everybody is asking about and planning ahead to do.
Yeah, well, I think that's really important to bring that up. I mean, it's critical. And also, what just you were saying about the the rising importance of user-generated content. As someone who comes from a video background and is also as a magazine editor, has worked with audiences of professional videographers, professional video producers for years. There used to be so much emphasis on video should really be done by professionals. Video should be horizontal, not vertical. I mean, all of that is out the window now. I mean, of course, professional video is very important, but you can't underestimate the value of user-generated content to users.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really comes in different formats now too, right? Like you can get explainer videos, or unboxing videos are still really popular, but a lot of people watch the explainers because it's a way of seeing not just the functionality elements, like how do you turn something on and off, but like how do they maximize the use out of it? How do they use it in their everyday life in a way that maybe you're not thinking about, right? Like that's when longer content really shines. But even then, we're not talking always about 30, 40, 50 minutes. Sometimes we're talking about 2.5 minutes at the most. So like, I think what people want depends a lot on why they're consuming it. And if it's just a quick, hey, does this work? Yes or no, it might be something super short on the UGC side. But if it's an explainer, it might be 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You might get something longer, but it really depends on the audience that you're looking at. But it's fascinating how different groups of people want different things. And so it's tough for advertisers right now. There's a lot to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you mentioned the European Accessibility Act, and I think we should get back to that, and just maybe talk about that a little more. Can you just talk a little bit more about what goes into preparation for, dealing with those accessibility requirements, and, I mean, and it's 2025 is right around the corner. So
I know. Maybe I'll just take a quick check. Do you know what the geo split here today is? I'm going to assume there's maybe a little bit more North Americans than Europeans.
I would guess so, but if anyone wants to chime in the chat and say where you're here from, and let us know what the split is, because it's just a list of names to us.
Yeah, that's fine. Just to be on the safe side, I'll maybe just give a quick overview of what it actually is then. So I think everyone is familiar with the European Union, and they produce legislation every now and then about different topics, and it applies to all of the member states, and it's for the benefit of the member residents. And so there's a new piece of legislation that has already been put forward, and it's coming into effect in June of 2025. And so this legislation requires that all digital goods and services offered in the EU is accessible to people with disabilities. So if you happen to be in North America and you think, oh, that's not relevant to me, it is actually if you advertise to anyone in the European Union. So just to make sure that you know that. So like, even if you're across the pond, this definitely applies to you. Europeans will already be looking at this. So essentially, what's happening is that because there are potential penalties, legal challenges, and even potential operating restrictions for non-compliance, a lot of brands and advertisers have started looking at this year already. The two things that most brands seem to be talking about are making sure that they're handling hearing and visual disabilities. So what that means is if you have a hearing impairment or a visual impairment, you want to make sure that somebody will still be able to consume and engage with your shopping or purchasing experience in a way that will help them complete their task. Okay, so what people actually ask about generally is some of the most obvious things, actually. So you touched on it before, Steve, with captioning, right? Captioning or subtitles is something that you can make sure helps anyone with an audio disability, because you can still read the text on the video as it's playing. You can put a text overlay on an image, right? If you need to make sure that you can see that. And likewise, if you need to, you can also put video translation to translate into the right mode in case they have a visual impairment. And so it's actually just about making sure that all consumers could consume your products, which will help you in the long run. But it's also making sure that you do it in a way that is sympathetic, and it gives people the option to consume it how they might need to consume it. So again, the stuff that comes up a lot from people are subtitles and captioning, text to audio or audio to text, right? And making sure that in case they do have one of those impairments, that you can translate into the language that they need, and they don't just get English. It's a little bit more straightforward if you're in North America because English is the predominant language. It's a little bit trickier in Europe because depending on where you are, you could be looking at 25 different languages.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to reach your audience where they are and localize your content to make it accessible to them and
Yeah.
appropriate for them.
Maybe one thing to add to this too is I know a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, it's a stick by the EU, but actually lots of companies who've already started doing this have seen a boost in their conversion numbers, especially with video. So I think there's a couple of things to call out about, sure, it might be something that we all need to do for the very right reasons, but there are certainly very good business logic in why this also makes sense, right? Like being able to play a video, for example, with the sound off but captioning on. Again, this is a trend that's already working, and most people consume with that to a higher degree. It also means that actually you could separate your audio and text layers, and you could reuse a video for a different geo and put a translation layer over top of it. So like some of the repurposing and business value elements do still come out here. It just maybe gives you something to think about on top of the right reason to do it.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, another thing I think we should cover here, and I know this is really important to Cloudinary's technology and Cloudinary's work is scalability. And so again, talking about global users and reaching a global audience, what are the technical challenges that you face in scaling video to millions of users globally?
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely close to heart for us and the primary reason why people come to us. But the couple of things that come up the most is number one, web performance. Because again, if your website or your app is one of your primary ways of driving your business forward and for people to make purchases, you want to make sure that whatever you're putting on your website does two jobs. It drives people there and it allows them to navigate through your website, but equally you're displaying your products or services in the best possible way without slowing everything down. So usually the first thing that people ask about is, hey, I do want to use video, but video files are very heavy. What are you going to do to help us balance quality with speed on our website to make sure that the website doesn't just come to a grinding halt? We want to make sure that there's no buffering issues, that people don't have to wait 10, 12 seconds for the video to play. Again, we all know a consumer will wait maybe 2 seconds, possibly 3 if you're lucky. So of course that can't happen. And so this is a pretty normal thing that comes up. And what I would say is like, if you are thinking about this, video providers should have some kind of balance available for you in a scalable, automated way to help gauge size, so quality and size of the video, weight of the video, with how to make sure that you're balancing speed. If they don't, it's an absolute red flag because that is one of the most common questions that comes up when people are first putting videos on their website. And then the second thing is making sure that you have a reliable playback service. So you have to have some kind of multi-CDN in place. It would be wonderful if all of your consumers were in the absolute same geography, but they'll probably move around a little bit. People have been known to travel on occasion or look at things from different countries. And so you want to make sure that you're cutting down the latency as well. Again, you're looking for a really smooth experience for them. And so getting those things right can help. So check for those things. And then maybe one more thing is like, when you're thinking about video, a lot of people also ask, hang on a second, if I am looking at people all around the world or in multiple locations, won't adding subtitles make my video heavier? And it's a valid question to ask, but one of the things to also think about is you can layer something like that on and add it to your video where it's really light. And you shouldn't notice anything with video speed or quality, and certainly not on websites performance as well. So just making sure that you ask those types of questions in advance will give you a good guide of what else to look for. Because again, you're looking for the fastest, lightest, most performant video possible with tools that help you do those things quickly and easily when you're dealing with like hundreds or thousands of videos at a time. You don't want to be tweaking that manually one by one. It's painful that way. You save yourself. There's other ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. I mean, when you're dealing with that volume of video, and video has become, such an asset to e-commerce and even an expectation, really. But if the performance isn't there, yeah, I see your point. I mean, you just lose people immediately.
Yeah. Like, Steve, be honest, how long do you wait when there's a video buffering?
Seconds. It's
Less
always
than
somewhere
five,
else to
less
go.
than two. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I have to admit, it's maybe 2 or 3 for me. And I wait knowing they're trying to load the page.
yeah, yeah. So let's get in a little bit more into video management. So as brands create more video content, what are the key things they should be thinking about to manage that content more efficiently?
Yeah. So I think, by the way, thank you for the excellent lead into this next question, because this is just top of mind. I would say, like, really think smarter, not harder. There are tons of automated tools that you don't have to um, do so many repetitive tasks. And that's first, the number one thing I would say is, like, look to streamline and automate as much as possible. Your time and resources will be precious. We all know that post-production costs a fortune, right? You don't want to have people just tweaking little things that, frankly, you can get AI to do for you now, and you can have really good oversight over, or you can set the parameters in advance to make sure that you're getting that result that you need every single time. So that can be taken care of for you. So worry less about that. But I guess the other thing that I would say is, like, when you're thinking about management, having a single source of truth is also really important. Um, Single sources of truth are also called dams, right? It's the place where you store your, in this case, video assets. You can store other types of assets there too. But I will say, this past year, I have been a little bit shocked of how many times prospects have come saying, we have to look for a different solution because we spent a small fortune producing this video last year. And actually, as we were trying to share it amongst our geos or our teams, somebody, one, either accidentally deleted it, or it got mistagged and now they can't find it, or something else has happened to it. It was damaged or cut or clipped or something. And now they're actually either going without it or reshooting it. And sometimes these are videos that cost five, six, $700,000 to produce, and they've lost it. So, like, please, 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 you don't have to have this. There's been enough horror stories about this year already. One of the things that you should absolutely do is make sure you have a single source of truth, however you want to go about it, and keep all of your stuff in one place. Okay. Now, the next thing is, if you do put everything in one spot, you actually need to make sure that you have excellent tagging. I know this sounds like housekeeping. It's about as sexy as highways or motorways are to anybody, but excellent infrastructure makes the world go round very well. And so making sure that you have excellent contextual relevant tagging means that your teams can find the content that they need. They can find it, they can use it, they can access it, and they can turn it around and get it back into market really quickly and easily, right? You don't want somebody trolling through all kinds of storage systems looking for stuff. If you're producing something new, you want it to be pushed out to your geos and to your markets quite quickly. And so make it easy for them to find it. And then again, I would say, like, when it comes down to being able to pick up something like UGC or third-party supplied content, I know people are sometimes nervous about this because it's not something that you yourself have created. There's tons of ways that you can help automate your control over this. That tends to be the number one concern. You can make sure that your approvals processes are in place. You can have moderation checks. You can have brand checks and brand flags in place so that you actually can pull those in, and you don't have to have somebody manually checking every single instance of the video and also watching every single second of the video. It's not, watching all of the video seconds is a little longer than flipping through images. So you would have somebody full-time just doing that, when honestly, automation tools can be your friend here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just thinking, when you were talking about the importance of tagging, and we had a cover story in the magazine a couple of months ago where Monica Williams from NBC said, when she was asked about tagging, she said, metadata is my jam.
Yeah,
Yeah. I,
yeah. Go ahead,
I
sorry.
think that I think that goes for a lot of people. Yeah.
It does. It's so underrated, and yet it's really critical. the number of times that people say, oh, we had a tagging system that was this, and then the person left the company and the whole thing fell apart. We can do better than that. Times have moved on. You can get great tagging systems. You can pick up and create your own metadata, and you can search through most assets now with things like blue car or dog. When does the dog come with the balloon? We can help you sort that out. There's us and many other providers, but you don't have to do this manually, and you don't have to do it the hard way anymore.
Right, right. So let's talk about emerging technologies. So how are emerging technologies like generative AI, the emerging technology that everybody wants to talk about, and we talk about in every session this week? How would you say that those technologies are shaping the future of video?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all to hear that Gen AI is coming up a lot. It comes up almost everywhere. Everyone is, I think, very curious to hear what's coming and to see practical applications of it being used. And so I think it's where it will shape trends of video is probably along two things. One is content velocity. So a lot of the AI right now in this is looking at how to create things. So for example, if you have an image, how do you create a video from it? Or if you have three sides of the box, how do you create the back side to be able to do a 360? So it's putting something that wasn't there before. And sometimes it's with code instructions, and sometimes it's with text instructions, right? And so I think if that really gets quite good, it would speed up the time to market. I'm not going to say replace video shoots, because that would be very scary, and I am not saying that right now, but it might cut down on some of the little bits that aren't there. So for example, if you go into a video shoot and you thought you got everything, but in fact you missed one section, or you realized you don't have the back angle of something, you actually might be able to use Gen AI to fill that in and to create that without having to go back to the shoot, right? So it could speed up there. And the second thing is definitely in terms of creative productivity. So not just being able to repurpose longer videos into those shorter formats, but making sure that you can generate different elements that maybe you didn't think you needed at the time. So let's say you have some kind of theme where you want to create, I don't know, beaches or something like that. And when you originally did the shoot, you're like, yeah, this is great. This is how we want it set up. But then when you take a step back and you look away, you think, actually, maybe we should change this, or I would like to see this element instead. The easiest, most obvious thing that I can think of quickly is palm trees or hammocks or different types of drinks or things like that, where actually you want to swap something in and out and you didn't think about it before. And so being able to make those kinds of changes to tell a slightly different story also means that your storyboard can change. But again, you're not going back to the video shoot if you don't need to. You might be able to just make little tweaks on your creative process and keep going from there.
Right. So, another question, related to generative AI. How would you advise customers to think about risks and control when it comes to Gen AI?
Yeah, I would actually say that a lot of customers and prospects say that they're really interested in Gen AI. And then when you ask them if they're using anything yet, they usually go, ooh, scary. No, not yet. Right. And so one of the predominant themes that comes out is actually the control element. And so I would say, like, really thinking through how you intend to moderate the content, put those approval processes in, and those control elements are really important. So for example, if you're working with a provider and they don't have moderation and control in, you will definitely have to have eyes on the video or on the images, if that's what you're using it for, and watch the whole video to make sure that it's what you want. And so maybe in the beginning, you consider it as an alternative creative source where you really have to screen it first before you put it into live production somewhere and you release it into the market, right? But then as those controls and approval processes can come in, then it becomes a little bit safer, because you can say, yes, it has to pass these checks using AI and moderation. And as soon as the approvals process says yes, we're fairly confident. and then you can push it live, right? And so I think if you're thinking about it as a way to bring content in, it's like anything else. You might have to train a model, you might have to have eyes over a bit to really narrow down what you do and don't want. But if you don't have content moderation in place, you will have to check it every single time before you do it. If you do have moderation in place, it becomes a little easier because you can be much more methodical about what you will and won't have. Think about it like your brand guidelines, right? Like you would want to make sure that whatever your product is isn't cut off on the side. You would want to make sure that it's positioned properly. Your logo might need to be somewhere. You'd want to make sure that there's no other competing logos in the shot with it or in the video with it, right? So some of those elements can be there too. But I think it's pretty normal to be concerned about this. That doesn't mean that the concern goes away just because it's cool. It just means you have to handle the risk in a way that you are confident putting something live. And the best way in the short term, if you don't have the moderation, is eyes over. And if you do have the moderation, then I would even suggest, like, for the first couple of times, make sure that you're checking just that you're comfortable with the moderation flow in place, and then you're good to go from there.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that that's the moderation piece is something that people don't think about enough, or they're just scared off by it, and they don't do it. But it's because people look to Gen AI and AI machine learning so much to offload tasks they don't want to do, and then okay,
Yeah.
we still have to be involved. We
Yeah.
still have to look for biases.
Totally.
Yeah.
The funny thing too is the concern that people have with Gen AI is actually the same concern that they have with using user-generated content, right? Because you don't know sometimes what you're getting until you look at it. And so it's the same concern, and you can handle the risk in the same way by actually just putting in that moderation and control for both use cases. You would have the same concern, by the way, with partner supplied video too. It's maybe viewed a little safer than user-generated content, but essentially, you're basically saying for all of these content types, since you didn't create them yourself, you want to make sure that they meet your standards and guidelines before they go live. And so you're actually just putting checks and balances in place to make sure that that could happen.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's what challenges and opportunities, again, talking about Gen AI, do you think that these new technologies bring for technical teams and business users?
Yeah. I think if companies that decide to embrace Gen AI will definitely be seen as like innovative adopters, just like anything else, right? Because let's be honest, Gen AI is still experimental technology. There aren't a lot of companies or brands that are using it to such an extent that they're saying, "Oh yeah, we're ditching the traditional ways." Most people aren't saying that actually. What they're saying is, "We'll dabble a little bit, see how it works, and go from there." Human intervention, absolutely needed. Human hands, definitely mostly needed. But I think what will come is if you are one of those experimental companies and you can find the right place to put it in, you will probably see a lot of business value coming out of it because you'll put it in the places where it cuts down on time, effort, and manual work, or you'll do it to save yourself time, effort, resources somewhere else. Again, like if you come back from a video shoot and decide actually you're going to need something a little different, if you can tweak it or modify it a little bit without having to go back to that whole shoot and redoing it, that's a big deal, right? If you realize that you shot it for one geo, but maybe just with one or two little tweaks, you could use it in a different geo, and you could do that with Gen AI. Again, that saves you a lot of time, effort, and money. So I think the companies that find the right use case and can balance what they need will not just be seen as visionary, but they'll actually be looked to as thought leaders and be seen as companies who are leading and for justifiably good reason. So I expect that they'll see that come back in ROI as well. The only thing I would say in terms of maybe challenges to think about is there is this element of ethics and making sure that when you are using synthetic media, so anything that's generative, it becomes clear to your customers that this portion is generated, right? I'm not suggesting that you put a big overlay on a video or an image and say generated by AI, right? But you would want to make sure that you're being thoughtful about not generating content about an individual. Nobody needs more spam in the world around, especially political leaders doing something or celebrities doing something or using something that they didn't actually do. And so making sure that you have an ethics position on what you will and won't use Gen AI for, I think is important. And then also making sure that when you do use it, you're not over representing your product, right? Like I know there are a number of food companies that are speaking with us right now where they're like, we're not sure if we want to do this because, for example, if you're ordering food from pick your app, any app, and it's for example, some kind of Asian dish where they've maybe got noodles or rice, some kind of vegetables in there and protein. It's not just making sure that the actual meal or dish looks how it's supposed to be. It's also about making sure that the portion size reflects what somebody is going to get. And so making sure that if you do use it for something, you don't overtune it and overset expectations so that the person, when they receive the product, is underwhelmed. You want to make sure that you're getting it to be as accurate as possible, but not over egging it as well.
Yeah, well, the last thing you want to do is undermine trust in your brand, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It needs to resemble what it actually is.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit more about future trends. Looking ahead, where do you see advances coming in, or changes in video consumption?
Yeah, we've touched on a couple of them already. First, I mean, video consumption is only going to increase, right? And I think this will change by demographic. I am not suggesting that older generations don't consume video. They do actually. They just consume a slightly different mix. But as the purchasing power for Gen Z overtakes millennials, you'll actually see that they do really want those shorts, right? Like they want short, sweet, cut to the chase. The other thing is they don't want perfect videos, right? To your point earlier, Steve, they actually want slightly sideways videos. They want non-landscape videos. They want something that doesn't look perfectly groomed and perfectly styled. They want that authentic feel. And actually, they often don't even want celebrities or models. They want actual users, everyday people who are using and consuming the product because, again, they feel that that's a more trustworthy representation and they have better brand alignment to that than to somebody that maybe they can't identify with, right? So something like that. I think that you'll still see sustainability coming up a lot, especially for values, generational values that come through. That's a big, heavy hitting thing for millennial. It's a big, heavy hitting thing for Gen Z. And I think even the baby boomers would agree with this, especially in terms of ROI and sustainability. So I don't think that's going away anytime soon. Interactivity and immersibility, I think, are themes that everyone can continue to expect, right? Engagement is high. If a consumer is interested in your brand, they actually want to engage with it. They don't expect to be pushed to. They want personalized content. They want some kind of way where they can touch, feel, look, watch, see, experience, live through the eyes of something like that. So rethinking that shopping experience or that touching experience where it's not just you push a specific set of content to them, I think will change. And again, I think just the push on authenticity, right? Like making sure that you're really thinking about what will drive engagement with those users. If they want to see it in more real life settings, you might have slightly less staged video shoots. You might look at more quick shots. What else you can do with, I'm not suggesting you'll have to cut your budget, but it might be something that you think about because maybe you don't need all of the same things that you want if you're going to be shooting in a slightly different way now. If you're going to be shooting more with phones because consumers identify with that. It's something just to give a bit of thought to, but I think that the traditional video view is changing and it will change generationally as the monetary buying power comes up.
Yeah, and I think that, it's really important to look at those parts of the audience and what their expectations are, what their authenticity demands are, and also just, I think, to listen to the younger people in your organization. I think people of my generation, baby boomers before me, they always neglect to do that, and
It's really funny because I think actually all generations do that to each other, right? If you watch a Gen Z try to explain what they like about their video experience to somebody older than them, they think the other person just isn't with it. And so both generations actually think that. And I think the funny thing about Gen Z right now is they were born into a time where there was digital since the minute they were born, right? And so they grew up in a world where it was always there, it was always on, and they get it from all sides constantly, right? Like most Gen Zs spend a substantial amount of time on screens or on their phone, and usually they don't like being away from a device, right? People start to get uncomfortable when they're detached from their devices. But when you think about a different generation, even mine, right? Like I have to force myself to have digital detoxes because I know this is good for me, even though the first bit is uncomfortable. And there's times where I want soundless video. I might be in a public spot, but I don't want 20, 30, 40-minute videos. Time is precious. I want you to get to the chase and tell me what I'm looking for, and then I want to go on my merry way. Whereas somebody who's older or is used to consuming video in a different way will want the warm up, they'll want the message, and they might want the wrap up in a more traditional story element. So I think they all have a point and a value. It's just when you are targeting your video, making sure that you know which one of those audiences you're actually targeting to, that should determine the type of video that you're actually trying to generate. Because if you get that wrong, your buying mix will be off.
Right, right, for sure. So, you mentioned the single source of truth, the damn, earlier, and I think what you were saying is you're damned if you don't, really, right?
Okay, so we have a lot of damn jokes, and there is the damned if you don't. There are many, many, many. But yes, I think so.
But
Um,
do you see that as a coming trend, video and the single source of truth? I mean, you think that's where we're headed?
yeah, it seems like that for sure. Um, I think it's been a tough couple of years for a lot of brands. Everyone assumed that that bump that everybody saw at the beginning of COVID would go on forever. And in fact, in most parts of the world, it's been a little bumpy over the last couple of years. And this year hasn't been the best year for a lot of people. And so what we saw before, where most of the consolidation was maybe being seen as tech stack consolidation purely for the APIs, actually, it's a different mix coming through these last 18 months. What we see now is a lot of marketers pairing with their technical counterparts and actually looking where they have overlap and how they can consolidate budget. Everyone is under pressure for this. And the thing that they're coming most now for is they're looking at DAM plus video, right? They're looking for a way where they don't have to lose their assets. They want to store them in a similar place. And usually they're saying, we have more than one asset type. So yes, we have a lot of video and we want to store that and we want to be able to tag and find it appropriately, but we need a spot where we can also put our image or our 3D or other forms of synthetic media. Can we put that all in one spot too? They may want permissions and control to make sure that some people can use certain elements. You can't delete anything, right? Certain things like that, but they do want to make sure that piece and that suitability for everything is there, because they don't want to pay. Maybe before they were happy to pay for 3 different budgets and they knew there was some overlap, but they were fine with it. It's maybe a different budget world these last couple of years, and most people are being more mindful about how they spend their money. So I think MarTech consolidation is absolutely coming up.
And so, if a company is thinking about video but is cautious about committing to the costs, the complications, the timing, how would you advise them to get started with it?
Yeah, it's something that we get asked a lot. And I would say, look, video isn't new, and companies aren't doing it because they think it just looks better. They're doing it because there's a very real ROI for them, right? They're getting great business results and it's helping them generate additional revenue. That's the reason why they're doing it. But if you're not sure yet, and you might be on the part where you still have to build the business case, or you're partway down building the business case, I would say start small. No one is expecting you to go from 0 to videos everywhere in one jump. And to be honest, it's a very high risk strategy, right? So the first thing to do is actually just make sure that you understand what you might be looking at and why. So an easier thing to do, an easier step is if you are in a group, for example, and you have a sister company and they've already started to trial out video and you have some kind of similar target audience, being able to take some learnings and extrapolate a little bit will help you build your business case. If you don't have any video at all yet, there's a couple of things to do. One is to try a video-like experience. So again, there are absolutely features and functionality where you can take a static image and zoom and pan through it to create a video-like experience, even though it's an image, right? Start there, put that on your website, maybe on one of your PDPs, and see what your conversion rate is. Is it better? Are the engagement rates different? Try something like that, because it won't break the bank in terms of storage for you. It won't break the bank in terms of bandwidth. You'll still be able to get that experience. The other thing is actually check to see if you do have either partner supplied or user generated content. The reason why you look here next is because those videos could exist and you could integrate them as a test, but you don't have to put the upfront cost in place for generating the actual video. So again, I would caution you to think about your moderation and control, right? Make sure that you're pre-screening, maybe have 5 or 6 UGC videos that you think you can integrate, or partner supplied videos that you think you can integrate, put them in a couple of spots and just see, right? And then if everything goes well and you can see that you're getting a much better engagement rate and conversion rate, then maybe it's time to think about how to start generating content and think about like how long or short you need it. There's absolutely no need to shoot a 30-minute video if you're only going to need 10-second clips, right? Like keep your post-production costs in order and make sure that you shoot the shortest amount that you need. You can use AI to help tune the rest of it to really clip it down to exactly what you want from there. But start small and build up. You don't have to go from 0 to 100. You can take it in incremental steps for sure.
Well, that's great advice, man. It's great, like best practices. I feel like I should be writing this down, But we covered a lot of topics here, and I think we're getting toward audience Q&A here because we do have some questions. But before we do that, I think we would be remiss if we didn't just talk a little bit about Cloudinary specifically, and really how you help brands with their videos.
Oh, sure. So Cloudinary is a video and image API company. So we actually work with companies who are trying to scale their video specifically assets. So if you're thinking about videos where you have hundreds and thousands of them and you're pushing them to different spots, we are the company for you. We have had AI in place for years and years and years, but really we focus mostly on shorts. So product listing pages, user-generated content, or partner supplied content, and also helping companies go from long to short, because this is something that everybody is asking for. We can help you do composable. We can fit in with your tech stack, right? We are part of the Mach Alliance, which is something that is absolutely worth looking at if you're looking for a composable solution. But mostly we help you manage, edit, customize, repurpose, and make sure that your content gets to the right people at the time that you need. I know we're not focusing a lot on Cloudinary today, so I'll keep it very short and sweet. But if you do want to talk more about Cloudinary, do ping me and I'd be happy to pick up the conversation. We have a Perfect. Thank you, Kathy. There's a couple of different ways that you can reach out for sure. The demo site is awesome. You can definitely pick us up through Contact Us, or feel free to drop me a LinkedIn and I'll respond back and we can pick up from there as well.
Great. And before we switch over to Q&A, any last thoughts? Any other things you want to talk about?
I think you covered almost everything. I would say, look, if you can, give video a try. And do it in a way where you don't have to go down production right off the bat. Test a UGC, test a partner supplied video, find something that you can put on, even if it's a pan and zoom image conversion into video. Lots of ways to get started. You don't have to be scared. There's incremental steps along the way to go for it.
Great. So yeah, we've got just a few questions here from the audience. Some of them kind of going back pretty far into our conversation here, but I would like to get these answered. So one of the questions relates to the European Accessibility Act. And so Beth asks if you if you follow along exercise or dance streaming, do you need alternative for the disabled under this act?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It's a bit of a gray area, so I'm going to state right now it's a gray one, and you probably have to check with somebody else as well. But it might fall under services if you pay for the exercise. So, for example, if you subscribe to something and you pay a fee every month to be able to access the videos, it very well might fall under the services element. If it's free, you probably just need to check to be on the safe side. But you I mean, being able to turn on even captioning is not a heavy lift anymore. So if you do have to do it, there's easy ways to do this, and it won't take too much time at all to do this.
Okay, great. And then another question about Cloudinary's approach to or maybe even more generally subtitles in multi-country platforms. Do you use AI to add those subtitles?
We do. So I won't speak for other companies, but for example, for us, we use AI in a lot of things. So there's a difference between generative AI and AI, right? Most companies have been using AI, which is just, again, that part about working smarter, not harder on everything, to be able to tune and do things in a more streamlined way. Generative AI refers to specifically about putting pieces in place that maybe weren't there before. Okay, so when it comes to language translation and subtitles for videos, for example, if you have captioning or subtitles across the bottom, we can actually pick up the language that you're in. So for example, if the subtitles are in English, we can translate them into the language that it seems like your consumer is in. So for example, if they're in Spain, we would translate it into Spanish. And we would show them the Spanish one. And so AI can detect the language, and it can handle the translation. So these are things, again, that you don't have to do by yourself. There's technology in place to do this, and it is so much easier. I'll just tell you as well, for example, like we can already auto-translate into over 100 languages. So we have most things covered, maybe very fine dialects in certain areas, maybe a little bit more work to do there, but over 100 of the main languages spoken in the world already. So you don't have to do this the hard way. There's easy ways to get this done.
Great, great. So another question, when we were talking about UGC moderation. So the question is, can you give us a place to find these UGC moderations that provide extra protections?
Yeah. So depending on the provider that you want to go to, the way to ask this question is like this. So if I want to use UGC, what type of moderation and control do you have in place? Or you can also ask, what is your approvals process for moderation, right? These words are similar, they mean slightly different things. Moderation means your ability to double check that everything meets your criteria before it goes. An approvals process means putting hard approvals in place. Think of it like if you have some kind of opportunity going through Salesforce and someone is discounting something on a deal, you might have to have an approval where somebody says, yes, you can discount above this amount, right? The approval is like that, where you say, hey, we want eyes on to make sure that before we push this, somebody actually saw it. Usually they do it like that right in the beginning. And so you can do it that way too. If you do it just with moderation, it might just be, here's my brand guidelines, here's the things that I care about. I want to make sure that these things happen. The approvals process, you can add on top of that to say, in addition to that, at the very last stage, I want eyes on, and I want somebody to click a yes, no button before we push it out. But just asking about things like that, you should be able to get a good answer. If they don't have a good answer, or you feel like they're being very vague, they don't have a solution in place.
Okay. Got a lot of good questions here. There's another one. How do you balance the velocity and AI content creation with copyright issues for sufficient human content to be copyrightable? What's the fine line that people are using for probability of copywriting? It goes on, what percentage of human authorship when using AI, i.e. image creation, is would the original sketch or drawing be enough?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I would say this type of theme comes up on a philosophical level, but it also tends to come up with your legal team when they're saying, how would this work? And so there are a lot of instances now when if you're editing content or you're generating content or you're borrowing content from somewhere else, being able to say, or at least keep track of and say, like, we took it from here and we did this to it, and then we pushed it over here. Being able to keep track of that workflow is important, because if anything came back to you and somebody was saying, oh, you did a copyright infringement, you would actually need to be able to check whether or not you did, right? But generally, the legislation will take some time to come up to speed around Gen AI, for sure. So I think we're probably in a gray area right now on this. Just like generally when you're borrowing open source code for something and you amend it on your side, it's generally agreed that you're allowed to take the open source code because it's available. And so unless somebody says the content can't be used, right now the presumption is that you can use it. Okay. It's a little bit different if you're scraping material off of somebody else's website or their assets or their photos. That's why I would say, like, maybe just be really careful about celebrities, politicians, those types of things, because you want to use material that's largely yours or your UGC generated content with their permission, right? So as long as they say yes and they agree to you to make a couple of changes, it's fair game. But try not to take something too far, or at least keep track of the changes that you're making just in case you need to refer back to it later. But in general, a little bit of a gray area. I don't think legislation is really great on this, and I don't think there's a hard and fast rule one way or another.
Okay, makes sense. So another question, going back to when we were talking about Gen Z and millennials and how they bring different expectations, than we might be likely to expect to the content they see online. With younger generations and brand value for long form TV and film content versus short form video ads, are you also saying that they don't care about celebrities in movies and TV, or is that different?
I think it's different. And just to clarify, I wouldn't say that they never want to see celebrities or models, because in general, they have high viewership of television, of any kind of streamed service, right? So they're definitely consuming video, especially if it's programming. But it seems that the way that they think about authenticity is not the same when they're being when they're shopping, essentially. So like if they're looking for something and they're comparing products online, actually being able to see, for example, a model on Zara wearing a garment and spinning and seeing that, they wouldn't necessarily think that that's as authentic as seeing somebody, Joe Bob or whoever it is, who's taking a video of themselves wearing the same garment and spinning. They would consider that the real life person is more authentic than the model in this case. Again, it doesn't mean that they won't do celebrities. They will. It's just they seem to want to pick and choose what they want their celebrities for. And I guess the star power has changed a little bit generationally. They can see stars at any given time. They pull out their phone and, oh, look, there it is. Or they stream into this, or, oh, this is coming up and they have 5 minutes to join and they join it. So it's maybe a little bit different than what other generations have experienced in terms of star exposure.
Great. So we got time for just a couple more, I think. So one question is, can Cloudinary be used as an entry-level ad serving solution, whether banner images or video pre-roll, not for larger scale media, but again, small startup sites looking to monetize?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Just to clarify, we are not an ad serving solution. It's something that we talk about every now and again, but in fact, we are not an ad serving solution. We don't have some of the front elements that you will need. So you do definitely, if you're looking for an ad server, you probably need to look elsewhere. What we can do though is help moderate your content and store it on the back end to get your videos into the right shape to be used with an ad server. But as it stands, we just, in full transparency, we do not have ad serving capabilities.
Okay, well, it's really good to clarify that. Thanks. So one more question. What about machine learning that scrapes off public content like audio, music, AIs?
Is this in relation to, can it be used as like, as part of Gen AI
Or
or
maybe can it be
accessibility?
used in video in that way? I think maybe that's can it be used in the same way with video? I might be the Beth, but rephrase.
I I would say, okay, if it's that, oh, copyright issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think it depends because music is a little different. There tends to be infringement rights if you're using somebody else's music and you aren't paying for the royalties on it. And so it isn't always public content. The rights usually belong to someone. And they usually belong to the artist or the publishing house in that case. So music is maybe a little bit different. If it's 100% generated on the spot, again, I think you'd have to check if for example, one of the providers who's generating it has rights where you can't use it somewhere else or you can't use it for commercial reasons. Sometimes you can use things like that just for your own personal use or for presentations within a company or something like that, but the intention is not to use it for commercial purposes. So I think that's also maybe a gray area to check, but generally music, there's somebody owns the rights to it, so it's a different category.
Great, great. Well, thanks so much, Kim. This has been a great conversation, great time for me, and really informative. I think,
Thank you so much for having me. Video is one of my favorite topics. And I've loved to see all of the comments and the questions here. It's been a really engaged audience. So thank you to all of you for staying engaged for the whole hour. And if you have any questions or comments, happy to pick that up later.
great, great. And just a couple of things before we go here. Our gift card giveaway, the walk-up music that you heard was I'm an Old Cowhand by Sonny Rollins, and it was correctly identified by Eric Walsh. So Eric, watch your email over the next week or so and for instructions on how to claim your prize. So thanks again to Kim Matenchuk and to Cloudinary. And please join us right back here at 2:30 for Do the Math. Where can live streaming, monitoring, and analytics save your money? Save you money. Thank you.
Thanks again. Bye.